wonderful with both feet on the ground. It's that second time you hear a love song sound. Makes you think perhaps that love like youth is wasted on the young. Love's more comfortable the second time you fall. Like a friend.
Oh, I fade that reluctantly. It's a kind of a great... You know, we should do a show, Dylan Reyes and I should do a show about charts. Because those are really good charts. It's also, that's a Dutch... I think that it's like an all-Dutch performance. I think the singer is Dutch, the orchestra is Dutch, everybody's Dutch. They're taking care of our American standards in the Netherlands while we fritter our lives away. All right, so it's Ask or Tell Me Anything. And, oh boy. And the number is 888-720-9677. 888-720-WNPR. I'm going to mention this a couple times during the show, but observing this show right now is the legendary broadcasting talent Chion Wolf, who next Monday will be hosting this show, this version of this show. Well, not this version of this show. She will be hosting the version of this show that takes place next Monday, if you understand me. So she's just kind of seeing. I mean, there isn't really anything that I do here that that is sort of some kind of professional secret or intellectual property. But anyway, she's observing it too. So she can understand what not to do. I think that's probably the goal here. Mistakes that she could very easily avoid making. All right, so once again, the number is 888-720-9677. The rules, such as they are that there are no rules. You can call up about any topic you want. Obviously, there's some other pressing things going on in the news, but it doesn't have to be that. It can be something else. For example, Arthur. Arthur in Hamden has called about the proverbial something else. Arthur, you have the floor.
Well, thank you. I have to tell you how much I really love the show, and been looking forward to some reason to call in other than the pressing issues of the country at this point. And I thought of one. I listened to your show about Robert Frost, and it occurred to me how I have a story that was related to this long ago when I was in school. When I was taking speech class, I had to memorize a poem and deliver the poem to the class. It happened to be Mending Law. Fast forward so many years to when my wife and I finally moved here. I kind of realized the more of the literal meaning of the poem, or the meaning of the
Oh no, I hate to tell you, but you're cutting out a little bit. So move closer to where you were before, because your phone is cutting out a little bit, and we're missing things that you're saying. There are lacunae in your speech right now.
No, sorry about that.
There, better. That's better.
Okay, great. Anyway, as I come to realize that the watching and witnessing the stones falling from the wall, the poem that I memorized years before kind of made sense finally. As far as watching, with all the stone walls around here, and as I rebuild the stones on my walls at my property, I just thought it was interesting that I just wanted to share that with you.
Well, I'm glad you're sharing with that. I think I have a money-making idea for you, Arthur. Are you ready for this? Are you interested in making a great deal of money, first of all? Does that appeal to you at all, making a lot of money?
Usually, yeah.
Yeah. I'm thinking, and this is just off the top of the noggin, Robert Frost Fantasy Camp. First of all, you know how there's people who they pay a lot of money to go down to Florida and have washed up, 52-year-old major league pitchers throw them fastballs, that they can hit and stuff like that. They do this thing. I mean, orthopedic surgeons, in fact, my orthopedic surgeon, pay money so you can go down to Florida.
We do this together.
Yeah.
We live right next to Sleeping Giant State Park. There are stone walls throughout the
Oh.
entire place.
I mean, we need more.
we
You need more stuff than that. I said I could be a silent partner, but because you're going to need some kind. First of all, you've got to have a fork in the road, right? You've got to. You've got to have, even if you have to build one on your own property, you've got to have a road that you can go in two possible directions. And you're going to have to, I mean, you're going to need some stuff, but then, people could come in, have a Robert Frost fantasy weekend, have some food that Bobby liked to eat. I forget, I think might be somewhere in that biography what he liked to eat. But, I'm not saying you're going to be able to retire to Majorca, but on the other hand, I think Robert Frost fantasy camp could be a winner. Could be a winning item. I'm willing to put substantial. Oh yeah, is your wife? Would she be willing to help out in certain ways?
I think so.
I don't want to be too gendered about it. I guess I'm sort of wondering who is going to make the Robert Frost dinners that people are going to have every night. It's that kind of thing.
As it occurs, I'm a chef.
Yeah. Okay, so that's good. That's really good. Yeah, I do all the cooking. I don't think I'm a chef, but this is perfect. Oh. You should just run with this idea. Call us back in 3 years and let us know how, unless this turns out to be a terrible idea and you sue me, in which case don't call me. All right, Arthur, great call. What a great way to get us going. But here we go. We're going to go. But this is a good one. Here's Helen. Helen is calling in. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Yeah, I was wondering, do you have a bucket list? And if you do, what is on it?
Well, one thing I've always wanted, there's a particularly good bucket that's sold by LL Bean. It's in the back of the catalog. It's very expensive. I would like to get that bucket if I possibly could. It's been something. No, most of my bucket list probably has to do with travel, and it's been really weird, but because all these medical things that have gone on in my family, it's been very difficult to get over. I've discovered something about being a caregiver, which is you don't travel that much when you're a caregiver. So I have this idea. I'll tell you one thing that I really want to do, and it's kind of on my mind because of a speech I'm giving later this year. I want to go to Bologna. I've always kind of wanted to go to Bologna and Siena, which are kind of, I feel like Rome and Florence and even maybe a little bit Milan are kind of overrun with people and tourists and stuff like that. And we actually did a show about how there are too many people going to Bologna because there's a whole mortadella thing. And I guess it's like on food shows or something and people go there and they just are really annoying about the mortadella. But I want to go to Bologna. Bologna, I believe, you can fact check me on this if you want to, but I believe Bologna and Oxford are the two kind of European universities that are created first. And I've become really interested in quadrangles. The whole idea of a quadrangle is kind of symbolic of that initial attempt to impose order on chaos. We do a lot of shows here where we do shows where we talk about the beginnings of things like indexes or indices or alphabetical order. So I'd like to go to Bologna.
Interesting.
Almost all my bucket list stuff is travel related. I think I've led an interesting enough life the rest of the time so that I don't feel like they're unchecked. What is on your bucket list? What would you like to do, Helen?
Oh, my God. I've started it because I've recently retired. And I think I mentioned it last time. I've worked in healthcare my whole life. Mm-hmm. And you see people who are elderly and oh, my God, these are the golden years because they're facing all kinds of issues. And I'm like, I want to do stuff while I feel good. Yeah. So I took an art class, fine arts class, stuff I've never had time to do. I zip lined. I want to hot air balloon. I do want to travel.
Yeah.
Definitely travel.
But those are good things. Where did you zip line? What location were you in?
Foxwoods.
Foxwoods?
Yeah, hotel. Yeah.
I don't know.
I was all brave. Let me tell you, when you're standing on top of that building, I was all brave. I'm like, I'm going to do this. This is going to be great. And and then I got up there and they said, okay, they put you in a sling.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, sit back. And I'm like, heck no. So it took a few minutes for me to do it, but.
I know. Sometimes the fact, the primitiveness of certain technologies can alarm us. I remember at one time, one thing, I sort of feel lucky that over the course of my life, just having been a kind of cockeyed version of a journalist, I've done a lot. I rode an elephant one time and I went on the Goodyear blimp. And the thing about the Goodyear blimp, at least at the time, and I doubt they've really upgraded it very much, is that it just basically was the same as the technology was when blimps were invented. I mean, there was this kind of wooden wheel that the guy was using it to, I don't know, make it go up. It just didn't seem like, I suddenly realized that you get onto a modern airliner, and although it can be scary in its own way, you don't really see how it works.
Exactly. You don't feel it
Right.
like you do.
And I would think a zip line would be kind of like that too. It's kind of like, oh, where are all the accoutrements that in some way, possibly falsely, betoken safety? Yeah.
I was like, this is what? Are you going to put me in a sling? And I just kind of like, wait, I thought this was going to be more like, I don't know how to put it, more, I don't know.
Well, I don't want to cast asparagus on Foxwoods, but I feel like Foxwoods, they don't necessarily, if I'm going to go to a zip line, I want to do it in Costa Rica where, in some eco resort where they really, obviously value the individual life and the collective life. Whereas Foxwoods, sure they're very nice people, but they're trying to get you to gamble so they can take your money. That's the main thing they're doing.
The kids were funny. I said, is this your first day? Because there's young kids strapping in there. And I'm like, I hope this isn't your first day. And they were like, no, it's our second day.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, that's all right.
There's a Mike Birbiglia monologue that includes that, where he goes on his first date, I think, with a young woman, and it's some, traveling amusement park, one of those carnivals that's set up in a vacant lot. And it's this thing that spins around at incredibly high centrifugal force. And he said, he's just sort of imagining the meeting of the business leaders who are behind this carnival, and they discuss this new ride and what it does. And then one of them said, well, who are we going to get to operate this incredibly dangerous, cutting-edge ride? And another guy says, well, I've got a 14-year-old nephew who smokes pot all day. And they go, well, that's the guy. Let's get that guy. He's perfect.
He'll do it.
Yeah.
He'll do anything.
So that's who was buckling you into your zip line, too. So, but you were very brave. You did it.
The thing that is important to remember, too, is like you have to, whatever your bucket list is, you have to do it within your means.
Yes.
I would love to go to Costa Rica and travel and everything. But you know what? It's a lot cheaper to go to Foxwoods and go up the building.
It is. And in Costa Rica, they have spiders, too. They have, lots of... I think Costa Rica has, maybe per capita, the highest... I'm making this up. The highest exotic spider population. I mean, they have, about 700 spiders for every person. So there is that. But they also have tapirs. Yes, go ahead.
One more thing I want to do. I think I want to take a legit history class. I took college classes, and I've never... I don't know if I want to do European history, American, world history. I just wanted my own understanding of history and I hear that you can take, I guess Harvard has classes that they film and they put online.
Yeah, there's all kinds of things like that. You should totally do that. Yeah, I think that's a wonderful ambition. I think you're going to have, Helen, a wonderful retirement, and I'm happy to be a part of it. Even a little tiny part that I just became. All right, we got Mike from Woodbury. We're going to get to Mike in just a second. Let's go over to Tracy in West Hartford. I've heard of West Hartford, Connecticut. I hear it's a lovely place. It's very well organized.
Hello,
Tracy.
Hello, I have a question.
Yes.
Do you think it's a possibility that now, because NPR's funding from the federal government has been cut, that maybe they can be less unbiased?
Less unbiased. More biased?
Maybe.
Well, here's let me just contextualize this a little bit, particularly for the other people listening right now. First of all, NPR itself didn't lose very much funding at all. I think they lost about 1% of their funding. They don't get a lot of money from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Corporation for Public Broadcasting much more involved in making grants available to companies like this one, like Connecticut Public. We lost about 10% of our budget, $2 million. Other stations around the country lost even bigger chunks of their operating funds. So NPR, I think you will see NPR just, proceed as always. I don't think, they really didn't take much of a hit. It's really the kind of the rest of us. Now, when you say this other part about, so you think that NPR was holding back on its critiques of, let's say, Trumpism because of the
think so.
money?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. It sort of depends. It really does depend. And first of all, I don't think NPR was at any point, for the reasons that I just outlined, and for other reasons as well, holding back because of money, because, as I say, NPR didn't get much money. I don't know. I guess I've said this before on these Ask or Tell Me Anything episodes, but I'll say it again. I think NPR needs to maybe do both. Like, I think it would be a bad thing if NPR... I mean, look, the reason the money was stripped away was because of a perception among Republicans that NPR is incredibly biased, and that it's a tool of the Democratic Party and of liberals in particular. And so I mean, the idea to them that now that there's no monetary, reins on this horse, the horse can run even further to the left. I mean, I think the people on the right would say, well, how would you even do that? What I think is this. I still think basically the job is to tell the truth. And then, of course, ascertaining what the truth is its own kind of complicated question. But I think our job is to tell the truth. And I think our job is also to represent a lot of viewpoints. It's one reason why we are on this show very slowly attempting to have more conservative voices on. Not crazy conservative voices, but we're trying to get Peggy Noonan on the show, for example. Because I think in some ways that's what's not happening, is that, so many of us and so many of our listeners have sailed into two elections, 2016 and 2024, not understanding what was about to happen. And one of the reasons we didn't understand what was about to happen is I don't think we talked enough to people, on the right part of the political spectrum. As I say, I'm not talking about platforming, lunatics, but I am talking about platforming people who have lived their lives as conservatives and have a particular view of the world. I actually think that's something that sort of not just company-wide, but entity-wide, public broadcasting-wide, needs to be done more. Now, the next question, Tracy, and this is a little bit where your heart lies, I think, is how do we report the critique of what's going on right now? And I think if you read Ezra Klein's piece or heard him do it this weekend, I mean, there's kind of two ways of understanding what's happening right now. And one of them is that it's an unusually high level of political dysfunction and malevolence that still falls within some kind of spectrum that would allow us to address it in more or less normal ways, the ways that politics have been traditionally fought out in this country for its entire existence. That this is kind of one more set of points that are plotted on that graph. The other way to think about it, and this is sort of Klein's argument, is no, this isn't like we're veering towards something. We are now in something that resembles fascism, that resembles some kind of highly autocratic, militarily enforced political system that is, and one that is a kleptocracy as well, as the Trump family, doubles its net worth just money that it's able to kind of hoover in from White House connected enterprises. I mean, so the Klein argument is, oh no, we are already in an incredibly dangerous place, and this has to be treated as a crisis. And so, but there's another way to report this whole thing. It's the first way that I just described it. No, we're sort of not in normal times anymore, but we're in a very twisted and misshapen version of normal times. And, that's a really interesting question. How do you describe the present moment? Because, yes, I think tell the truth, but then you have to decide what the truth is.
Okay. Well, I kind of fantasize. I go through the dial and I do listen to right-wing radio sometimes for as long as I can.
Yeah.
And I would like something, honestly, I'd like something a little crazy on the left, too, to get people kind of fired up.
Yeah. So here's the thing about that. I was actually approached. I was on commercial radio. I was the kind of left-wing house pet on a station that had like Rush Limbaugh and a lot of other conservative voices. And I was sort of tolerated. But I mean, I had, for quite a few years, I had a drive time show. I had a drive time show in the afternoon. That's a pretty big pulpit. And I do think that, I forget what point I was about to make, but I thought that was an incredibly useful thing for me because I was talking to people most of the audience kind of hated me, but they sort of enjoyed hating me. And the show was kind of fun, and so they listened. And they would just call in and say mean stuff to me. But I was talking to people that I don't ordinarily talk to, and they were hearing from somebody that they don't ordinarily hear from. And that was really good. Okay, now I know what I was going to say, which is I was approached by the people who eventually became the company that started Air America. I don't know if you remember Air America.
Yes,
Yeah, but it was sort of Al Franken, and I think Mark Maron was on it, and all kinds of interesting people. Janine Garofalo was on it, and it was an attempt to do something resembling what Rush Limbaugh was doing, but from the left. It was doomed to fail for a whole bunch of different reasons. Yeah. But I get it. I get what you're saying, that you wish that there would be a little bit more whooping and hollering. I'm not really sure that that's the role for public broadcasting, but I'm going to take what you say under consideration. How's that, Tracy?
Lovely.
All right. It was lovely talking to you too. And you know what? While you're waiting for that to happen, I would really recommend just doing a zip line. I think a lot of people enjoy doing zip lines. All right, we're going to take a little break. We're going to, you don't want to do a zip line at Foxwoods because Foxwoods is about betting on things, right? Foxwoods is therefore dealing in uncertainties. All right, never mind.
Hold your dream. Come home with me, honey. I ain't asking for no full-length meal. Hey, where you going? Don't go yet. Your glass ain't empty and we just met. You're mean when you're loaded. I was raised on robbery.
We got nothing to lose, so everybody just do. We got nothing to prove, so everybody just do. I see people every day getting in their own damn way, and honestly, I'm guilty of the same.
This song is mildly breaking my heart. It's Lake Street Dive and Lawrence, who performed at the Westville Bowl on Friday evening. I had tickets that I bought many, many months ago. And just because, once again, of my caregiving duties and my significant other caregiving duties, we wound up just not able to go to the concert. So it turns out that I was able to transfer. This is a good story. This is the happy part of the story. So I was able to transfer my tickets from my phone to the phone of Dylan Reyes, our technical producer, who was already there. But I figured my seats might be better than his because I got them so early. So then it turns out that he took them and he went to my seats, but there was like a dude in my seats, as there will be, It's about halfway through the concert. There's like a dude, because the dudes, they just be someplace, right? So the dude is in my seats. And so Dylan then looks at the guy's actual tickets, which actually entitled him to be down on the floor really near the stage. And so Dylan says, don't you want to be down there? And the dude says, no, I kind of like it here in these seats that are on my seat. I like it here. I like it up here. So somehow or other, then Dylan trades again and gets down on the floor near the stage. I think by the end of the evening, he played rhythm guitar on 3 or 4 of the songs near the end. Anyway, but I'm a little bit heartbroken. I really wanted to go to that show. So I'm just torturing myself by making sure this song is on the air. All right, Mike from Woodbury has been waiting patiently or possibly impatiently, but now he has the floor. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Colin. So I was originally going to talk about the New York mayoral race, Mandami, but then across the wires came the news that the Supreme Court has once again sided with Trump and basically saying it is okay to profile people before you arrest them. In other words, if you're working, if you're Hispanic, if you're working in a low-income job, like in a kitchen or construction or something, that's good enough for suspicion. And the three liberals, voted against it, and I think one of them made an outraged reaction to this. But isn't that like against everything that this country is supposed to stand for? Am I wrong about that?
I mean, first of all, I want to say a couple of things. One of them is, my understanding is this is a temporary ruling. The case will probably be back. This is an unsigned order, and a temporary ruling. So the case isn't really fully decided. It'll probably be back before the full Supreme Court in a more normal kind of hearing. But still, I totally agree with the sentiment of your call, which is that look, it's hard to think of a more disappointing American than John Roberts. It's hard for me to imagine a person who has fallen so grotesquely short of his...
He's supposedly an institutionalist, right? He cares about what people think of the Supreme Court. How can he do this and think that people aren't going to be outraged? I mean, the approval rating of the court is going to fall even further.
Right. I mean, he really is a disappointment in exactly that way. The whole idea was that he cared about the institution. He put it first, and instead he's put it repeatedly at the disposal of Trump. This ruling is not an outlier. This ruling is very consistent. In fact, it's one of the points that Klein made in his piece over the weekend, which is that the last time there was a chance of a government shutdown, the Democrats didn't do it. They didn't play the role that would have led to a shutdown. And Schumer had a bunch of reasons, and one of them was a shutdown might ultimately also shut down the courts, and they were heavily relying on the courts for relief and help. And Klein said, well, it's now clear that at least at the very top of the food chain, the courts aren't going to be helpful. You might as well shut down the Supreme Court because it's just going to give Trump whatever he wants. It seems to be what's happening over and over again. And yeah, there's something very profoundly un-American and unappealing to our just natural Lockean sense of natural law and justice. The idea that people, because they speak Spanish, because their skin is brown, whatever, they can be pulled over when they've done nothing through their behavior to excite reasonable suspicion. This is the opposite of how it's supposed to work. And we just live in upside down land. And, I will say this. I'm now kind of violating everything that I said to Tracy, but I understand what Trump is, and I understand, I think, what the MAGA movement is. But I also understand that all Republicans are not members of the MAGA movement. John Roberts would be somebody I would assume was not part of the MAGA movement. But I know lots of Republicans, and they don't think the way that Trump and his cabinet think. I'm just sort of we're all kind of astonished at the weak sauce of what the Democrats have been able to throw back so far. Their failure to articulate themselves as a reasonable and far more appealing alternative to what we have right now. Instead, their approval numbers are the worst they've ever been in the decades of Gallup looking at these kinds of things. But I'm also shocked at just normal Republicans that they are not on a regular basis. You know who's been speaking out lately? Mitch McConnell. Well, I mean, I guess that's sort of nice, Mitch, but where was your voice? Where was your voice 8 years ago, 12 years ago? Where was your voice when it really mattered? But for the most part, the mainstream Republicans, it was fun to watch them go after RFK last Thursday. But they haven't really done very much either. And I find that disappointing. And John Roberts is as good a symbol of that as any. He doesn't seem to mind being an apparatus, that Trump can use to get what he wants.
The other thing that I think that Ezra Klein said, interesting in that article which I read, is that if the Democrats shut down the government, what that will do is it will focus the mind, basically. It'll force everyone to pay attention. Mm-hmm. And then maybe they'll have a floor to say why what's going on is horrible and what they think that they can do to fix it. Yeah. Because right now, people, they're not paying attention. But if the government shuts down, then people are going to pay attention.
Yeah, and I mean, another thing that Ezra said was, and I think it's very important, that it would have been a bad idea to shut the government down when it came up originally, earlier in this term. But one of the reasons it would have been a bad idea was because the Democrats didn't know what they wanted to say. And it's really important now. If they were to do it this time, they need to know what they're going to say. They can't just say Trump sucks. This whole thing is, radically un-American and unconstitutional and anti-democratic. You can't just say that. You have to have a message that will mean something. But yeah, every time there's a new outrage, like the one that you just singled out, that's, it's just sort of another nail in that board. We have to find out whether the board is something we can build a structure with, or whether the only thing we can build out of that board is a gallows or a coffin. All right, here we go to Peter. Let me give out the number. It's Ask or Tell Me Anything. There are no guests. No guests to get in your way. No famous people, no scholars with their books. It's you. You are the guests. 888-720-9677. All topics are welcome. 888-720-WNPR. We've already seen the launch of a Robert Frost fantasy camp. Here's an interesting question before we go to Peter. Would it make sense for the Robert Frost fantasy camp to have a zip line? Is there anything anywhere in the poetry of Robert Frost that would warrant a zip line? Or maybe it's like a really slow zip line, I don't know. I'm just spitballing here. Here we got to go to Peter. Peter in Wallingford. Here we go. Peter, you have the floor.
Hi, Colin. Yes, I had a question about Donald Trump's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. It's on the internet. There's an attorney trying to get all the videotapes released from Jeffrey Epstein's mansions, one in Manhattan and the other one in the Virgin Islands, where there's a whole string of underage women, girls, having sex with Jeffrey Epstein's clients. And the government won't even touch this. They won't release the videotapes that might implicate, show who's having sex with all these underage girls, including Jeffrey Epstein. And I can't imagine Donald Trump would want to have any of these videos released, especially if he's guilty of anything. So that's the question.
All right. Well, I mean, I can just react to this a little bit and say that, yes, to some degree, a certain group of people, Donald Trump among them, have painted themselves into a corner or have been painted into a corner. I mean, they really kind of are at the point where releasing whatever they have is obviously something they don't want to do. I'm assuming in Trump's case that it's not that it's new information about him, but it's new information about people he cannot afford for various reasons to harm, people who are close allies of his. And the only reason I think that is that there's kind of a latent understanding that Trump had was doing some kind of stuff with Epstein. And certainly if there were more than that, it's one of the first things that Pam Bondi et al. And Todd Blanche and people like that would have figured out. Oh my God, no, there's a tape and look what they're doing. So I don't think it's that, I think it's that there are some very well-connected, very powerful people who are big players in Trump's existence that he can't afford to harm. And I think one of those names actually did come out over the last 2 or 3 days. So they don't want to release them, because it would be bad if they released them. But it's also bad because of promises they made and because of narratives constructed by people who are now part of the administration, the Dan Bongino type of true believers about these Epstein tapes. It's a real problem not to release them. And then I think they made a huge mistake with having Todd Blanche go down and do those Ghislaine Maxwell interviews in prison and then putting her in, some kind of transferring her to some kind of Club Fed type, luxury prison, because it really activated the victims. It activated the survivors of Epstein abuse, and they are willing to go public and be seen in public and tell their stories in public in a way that they were maybe a little bit reluctant about. It created a tipping point for that to happen. It was a huge tactical blunder. They were trying to shut up Ghislaine Maxwell by buying her off and maybe promising a pardon, whatever. And what they didn't understand was how much they were going to, as I said, just activate a bunch of other people with stories to tell, people who had maybe been a little ambivalent about telling those stories. So once again, I'd like to think that this would all mean something and that we would be in a different place as a result of this. But and certainly the way that we've tended to understand a lot of the things that have happened recently, including the deployment of troops in American cities as a diversionary tactic so people will stop talking about the Epstein materials. But I'm not sure that's the case anymore. And I do feel like the very short attention span of the American public, which ran a little bit longer on those one particular issue is starting to fizzle out a little bit as well. We'll see. Anyway, what we'll do now is we'll take a break, and you can call in about any topic you want. It doesn't have to be about all this nastiness. It could be about Robert Frost. It could be about any number of things. Whatever's in your heart right now. 888-720-9677, 888-720-WNPR.
Just sell it back next time around. Don't let the bastards get you down. Keep all the haters on your ground. Don't let the bastards get you down. Hey.
Don't let the bastards get you down.
I found your photo, your birthday note. Sweet sentiments from long ago. We lay in the grass and soak up the sun. You saw the world different from anyone. Almost 6 years, but you're still here. In my dreams, I'm always running into you. I'm rehearsing what to say. If I see you on another day, Jesse, where'd you go? Why'd you cut me out of your life? Tell me, let me know, yeah. Let me know you're doing alright. Do you regret it?
All right, we are back. That was the Maestro's Choice. And speaking of the Maestro, our technical producer today, as is the case most days, is Dylan Reyes, the Maestro. Lily Tyson is the producer of this. Lily Tyson Quality Entertainment Production. Robin Doyen-Aiken, I believe, is on the phones, which means you are having a very positive experience when you call 888-720-9677. In fact, you're having a far more positive experience than you have when you eventually reach me, as some people are about to do. And also, Kyone Wolf is listening in today, sitting in. She's in the booth right now because she will be hosting Ask or Tell Me Anything next week on Monday. And I'm guessing it will be a very different kind of episode of Ask or Tell Me Anything. It could be that maybe you prefer her to me. And, if that's the case, that's fine, okay? All right, here we go. We're going to go back to the calls. All right, let's do, they're all good. But we're going to start with Linda, because I think we can get through this one relatively quickly. But here's Linda with a story about a rally. I'm not suggesting that your call is de minimis, but I feel like we can, there's a place we can go with this pretty fast. Here we go.
Hi.
Hi.
I was at a rally this weekend, and there was a spotted lanternfly that landed on the sidewalk. The people in front of me were discussing it. I went over, and I squished it. They immediately were like, "Oh, you shouldn't kill it. It's a living thing." And I was just like, "It's invasive," and went on to a little bit to explain to them. Am I just a little, I don't know, I'm just wondering if, I just can't believe they don't want something that's, want to get rid of something that's invasive like that. It's just
maybe
let's just leave it.
Maybe the trick. Yes, no. First of all, I'm with you. I'm totally with you on this. But I think sometimes you need to set the tone going in. You need to set the tone pre-squishing. So what you do is you say to them, "This is an invasive species. It is a danger and a problem for our agricultural base and our livestock base here in Connecticut. It's not good to have this bug around, which is why I'm about to squish it." And then you squish it. And I think it's like squish talk doesn't work as well as talk squish. You see where I'm going with this?
Yeah, but it could have flown away before I got to.
That's true. It was a risk you would have been taking. And it's also incredibly easy for me. This is, l'esprit d'escalier. I have the wisdom and wit of aftersight. I could come up with this really cool way for you to do it. But you were there. You were on the front lines of the spotted lanternfly invasion. Probably you should have said something even more dire, like, these things bite you and you become a zombie. And just then we can work out the details later, but maybe they'd be a little bit more accommodating towards your squishing.
Yeah, maybe. I did say something like they eat our fruit trees or whatever. They ruin our crops.
These little bastards are trying to destroy us.
They are.
But I think
with the jumping worm.
Yeah, just a rule of thumb though would be talk squish instead of squish talk. I think we have
hold it nicely, and then
yeah. I think we now have the headline for this episode, too. All right, so we're going to go to Jill in Hamden now. Hi, Jill. You have the floor.
Hey, I wanted to ask you if you had any opinion on the idea of New England autonomy. This would be the 6 New England states working together as a region, something like Quebec, where we could have our own New England Emergency Management Agency, our New England CDC, our New England EPA, as the federal government starts dismantling those at the national level.
You're singing my tune. I mean, this is something that I think and talk about a lot. And I would also Google the term soft secession if you're not already familiar with it. That's one of the things that's being kind of talked about in the way that you're describing. And, you can look out to the West Coast where where California, Oregon, and Washington have now already banded together for some kind of immunization pact where they will kind of try to control their own destiny about vaccination guidelines. You're going to see a lot of that. And I think it raises some really interesting questions. And I'm all in favor of it. I feel as though the federal government is in a failure spiral already. There are a lot of things that the federal government is supposed to do that it's either not doing or won't be able to do, particularly because of the big, stupid, horrible bill. And so I feel we need to put a lot of pressure on state leadership, on our governors, some of whom are already answering the bell. And yeah, I mean, I do think there's already some talk in New England about a similar approach to immunization, that the New England states, or at least 3 of the New England states, should get together and form their own kind of regional public health agency.
It's going to cost, though. It's going to cost.
It's all expensive.
Be willing to pay for it.
I'm going to go a little bit further and possibly feel to endear myself even more to leadership here and say, I'm finding the Lamont administration so far, and Ned Lamont himself, a little bit sleepy and muted on this. I feel like we're in an emergency already. And certainly as the Medicaid defunding comes along and the work requirements come out, and the danger of having an awful lot of people kicked off of Medicaid is just, one of the big problems. And all of this needs to be addressed if, in fact, we're going to have federal dysfunction, which I think is the goal. One of the goals of the Trump administration is to have the federal government not work the way that it used to work. Then we have to look at everything that we're doing and how we're going to build better stuff. And some of that will be at the state level, and some of it, as you suggest, will be at the regional level. But if I were a governor right now, the first thing I would do is look at my entire cabinet, and I would say, is that person who I picked to run the Department of Public Health or any state agency, is that person going to be able to think in new paradigms? Because we're going to have to do things very differently. Is that person supple enough to be able to help lead in a different direction, where we're less reliant on federal oversight and less reliant on federal funds, and we have to find a way to do it. It's also not clear to me, I've been reading a little bit of E.F. Schumacher in my spare time, it's not clear to me that it has to cost a lot more, because in fact, when you deliver services to a smaller group of people, presumably you can deliver them more efficiently. So I'm wondering about that too. But I do feel like it's emergency time right now. Every state government, at least in a blue state, should be looking at this avidly, on a 5 cups of coffee basis. Like, how are we going to do this when it gets worse? because we can't wait for it to get worse to figure out how we're going to cope with that. And I'd love to see an awful lot more of that. So I'm with you 100%. I think you're asking exactly the right question.
Thank you.
Well, you're quite welcome. Thank you. Thank you for calling. And remember, talk squish, not squish talk. I mean, just a good advice. Unfortunately, I think we're living in a squish talk world. I think we have a squish talk president. But all right. This will be interesting. Valentina in Farmington, Connecticut, is joining us right now. Hi, Valentina.
Hi, how are you?
I'm just fine.
Excellent. So my comment, or what's on my mind today, is that I kind of finally realized something in dating, which I've done a lot of, still working on it. Mm-hmm. But my biggest challenge is that people really don't like to see themselves, whether they are men or they are women. And the dissonance between who they think they are and who kind of how the world responds to or reacts to them when they put themselves out there or open themselves up in the context of an intimate relationship. And then they have the reflection of, well, here's who I thought I was, and here's what I did, and here's how it affected this person that I'm close to and I care about, that they really, really struggle with that. And it's like the minute, and not even that it's necessarily a bad reflection and not that there's judgment in it, but the minute they have that, there's like this danger response of feeling discomfort with that dissonance.
But how is the dissonance drawn to their attention? In other words, do you or somebody say, the thing that you put in your Match profile does not in any way resemble who you are right now? Is that the kind of thing we're talking about? Or?
It's kind of, and I mean, to give like a really specific example, I was having a conversation yesterday, and thankfully it was like by text, so everything was in writing. Yeah. But the person, they said something to me, I literally repeated it back to them, right? And when they heard it back from me, it hit them in a different way, and they were like, I didn't even realize I said that. But before getting to I didn't realize I said that, there was all the defensiveness of how could you say that, and how could you see me that way? Which, to their credit, and this is one of the reasons I like the person so much, to their credit, once they kind of sat with it for a minute and they were like, oh yeah, you really did just say back to me what I said, we were able to have a discussion about it. But it's like whether you say it with as much kindness as love as you can figure out to give them in terms of who they are and how they need to receive it. It's just hearing it in the first place is like, okay, I don't like that mirror. I need to move to another one.
Yeah. But first of all, I want to salute you for how thoughtful and articulate you are about all this. I mean, you're really spelling something out in a really interesting way. And I think it's a universal problem. I always say, Vladimir Putin doesn't wake up every morning and say, I'm the greatest supervillain in the world. Right. I mean, he thinks he's doing a really good job, and I think he thinks he's benefiting the people who need to be benefited. That most people, they have a narrative, they have an inner story that validates what they're doing and who they are. And it's probably true for all of us, too. And we're probably all kind of kidding. As you get older, you have two choices. One of them is you can say, I'm going to drop all the energy that goes into proving that I'm a decent person and just acknowledge, that I'm a selfish pork face, or you get worse. You get even more encrusted and calcified about your personal narrative in which you are virtuous. Anyway, that's a great place to end, although it's a little bit depressing. And Terry, you had a good thing too, and I wanted to talk to you about it. And I don't know. I wish there were more time.
Você não morre tão cedo, acabei de falar mal de você. Você sumiu, foi de medo do frevo ferver. Foi bom você chegar, vai ver onde vai se meter. Tira a viola do saco que eu pago pra ver. Chegou na hora H, agora é que o pau vai comer. Agora é que o pau vai comer.